Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Irene Chan. I'm the program chair at the New York Book Forum. Our mission is to build bridges between the publishing world and the public. I say this at every program. I'm doing a faster version now. I say this at every program, and I'm going to say it again for the second time tonight. You guys are so lucky you're here twice. We're all here tonight because we are connected to books. Tonight's program is about diversity and storytelling, and we're all connected through books. I don't only mean physical books. Books represent stories and information that we want to share with each other and the world. We're all connected through stories, and it's important for us to have a variety of different types of stories and to have forums where we can share with each other. Collaboration helps us grow. It opens our perspectives. It creates opportunities, and we can also have a good time while we share our stories. And sometimes you have to hear it twice, but it's okay because we're all very understanding, and I appreciate everyone here. Connections enrich our community. I encourage everyone to send your reactions by using Google's reaction feature here. If I am being repetitive and you want me to shut up and move on, you can write that in the chat too. I won't be offended. The chat is open to everyone. We have time at the end of this program for a Q&A, but feel free to comment in the chat as our program proceeds. I'm delighted to present our program to you today, Diversity and Storytelling. Our speakers are Kyle Zimmer, President, CEO, and co-founder of First Book, a nonprofit working to remove barriers to quality education for children living in low-income communities, and Elissa Petruzzi, Program Director of We Need Diverse Books, a nonprofit dedicated to improving literacy through their programs that support diverse creators, educators, students, and consumers. A virtual round of applause with the reaction feature to welcome them to our program. Thank you both for being here tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, happy to.
So can you start us off by telling us about the mission and beginnings of First Book?
Sure. So First Book is a 501c3. I co-founded with a couple of friends more than 34 years ago. I'm amazed to report. I don't want to do the math on that too carefully. We have evolved. Our goal is to elevate educational opportunities for kids in poverty nationwide. We have evolved over the years and become the largest online community of adults in the lives of kids in poverty. We currently have over 630,000 members. They are largely Title I teachers and librarians, but not exclusively. About a third to and maybe a little more are homeless shelters, soup kitchens, church basements, public libraries, all kinds of other programs. Serving this community, we run three major programs. One is a research arm called First Book Research and Insights. We run about 20 studies annually to really give a finger on the pulse of practitioners to say, what's working, what's not working, and what's keeping them up at night, and what do they need? And we get lots of feedback, and I'm happy to share some of that as we go through our conversation tonight. The second big pillar is the First Book Marketplace. This is the oldest part of what we do, where we work with the publishers and we purchase highly diverse inventory for resale, but only to our closed market, only to our community. And we move about 10 million, 11 million books annually through our system. We're the largest specialty buyer for most of the major children's publishers in the US. What we've done, we have over time really prioritized diversity in the titles that we offer. It's always been a top priority. And the final pillar of what we've built is called the Accelerator. And what we do is we make experts available either through webcasts or through downloadable materials to our members regarding all kinds of issues that they cite in our research that they tell us are critical issues. So sometimes it's mental health, and we partner with the American Psychological Association. Sometimes it's how to talk to a very diverse classroom or program, and we've worked with a range of organizations on that programming. We just launched a platform that allows us to live stream author events and other kinds of trainings. So stay tuned for that as well.
That's excellent. Yeah, those three pillars, I can see how they work together. Elissa, can you tell us about the start and mission of We Need Diverse Books?
Sure. WNDB started as a hashtag in 2014 on Twitter, when we were still all on Twitter, as a response to a BookCon panel, an all-white BookCon panel. When I say it was all white, there was also a cat on the panel. And they, a bunch of diverse authors got together and said, this isn't fair. They got together and decided to start a hashtag, We Need Diverse Books, to garner a bunch of attention. They went viral right away. They got asked to come to BookCon and do a panel. And we've kind of grown from there over the past 12 years. Our mission is specifically to diversify publishing. We do it through 3 different audiences. We like to say that we work on the entire publishing pipeline. So we have programs that support diverse creators through mentorships and grant programs. We gave a grant to Angie Thomas. She bought a new laptop on which she finished The Hate You Give. She's one that we like to purport. In the middle, we support publishing professionals. Publishing, I can talk about this later too, but is a predominantly white cis industry. So we have a very robust internship grant program where we support interns. We pay them in the summer so that they can afford to have these internships, which then puts them into the industry where they can affect change. And then we give the books to kids and schools across the country. We use First Book a lot. And we work because our organization is built by authors, we understand the publishing industry and how if you don't have the sales, the cycle is not going to keep going. And so we work to provide the books and author visits to children in need nationwide, schools, same like First Book, after school programs, wherever we can find them.
Thank you. A lot was already said in these first couple minutes. Let's start really basic, and let's just talk about, how do each of your organizations define diversity?
I can jump in. Yeah, I suspect there's going to be a lot of similarity in our answers because we're compatriots, our 2 organizations. We define it very, very broadly. We always try to elevate diversity in everything we do, and certainly in the books we make available. It's, of course, about race and culture. It's, of course, about ethnicity. It's, of course, about language. It's also about sexual orientation and gender. It's every window that we can imagine a person seeing their world through. Mm-hmm. And it's the demand for the breadth is stunning too. And I know, Elissa, you probably have the same experience. 48% of all the books that First Book members purchased and received through us last year were diverse from one angle or another. So there's quite an enormous demand for exactly this content. But Elissa, I'll turn to you.
With WNDB, our definition of diversity is kind of the cornerstone of all the work that we do. We have a very broad definition. I pasted it into a document. I'm going to read it. Okay. We recognize all diverse experiences, including but not limited to LGBTQIA+, Native, people of color, gender diversity, people with disabilities, and ethnic, cultural, and religious minorities. That way we are including as many different populations as we can. Like Kyle said, we really subscribe to the windows and mirrors theory of Dr. Rudine Bishop, the mother of diverse literature, who says you want stories that reflect a child's identity, and then with the mirror, and then the window to look out into other identities and perspectives.
I think when people say, they're looking for, well, I mean, I'm using people loosely, but in general, and people are like, oh, we need more diverse books. They think about, we need more variety of stories in the marketplace. And I think availability, yes, we do need a wider variety of stories in the marketplace, but it's the whole system. It's more than just what's available out there. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of struggles that make it so that even if the books are available, they're not necessarily accessible. Things like book bans and literacy. We talk about this. We have a program about literacy at least once a year. These are two issues that I think even if there's availability, it affects accessibility. What are some areas you see where there are books available, but there are barriers to accessibility? And what are some things to help improve accessibility?
Go ahead, Elissa.
Okay, I'll start off with the biggest problem that I'm seeing. I don't know, Kyle, maybe you'll agree, which is book bans. They're very pervasive. They kind of are affecting a lot of the work that we do at WNDB because, like I said, we have those three buckets: the creators, the publishing professionals, the kids. And if the books are banned, if they can't get to the kids, then the cycle is not going to be able to continue to move. In addition to the pervasive book bans, that kind of the Supreme Court just ruled that it's okay for a parent that kind of was like phrased as parent choice in Montgomery County right here outside of DC, that it's okay for parents to pull their children for certain lessons, certain books. But what happens is then, as we have found, it turns into a chilling effect, which kind of begets soft censorship, where a teacher just isn't going to teach that book. They're not going to deal with pulling the right kid out at the right time or sending permission slips home. And teachers are scared of losing their jobs. Librarians just wanted to be librarians. They didn't plan on being civil rights activists, being doxxed in the newspaper, called terrible things. And it's having a real effect on the whole pipeline, and we're working very hard to combat that any way we can.
I can jump in and share some data. I mean, I think there are other barriers, and we can talk about that in a minute, but just staying on the issue of book bans. First Book ran a study just about a year ago, and what we found was really concerning. It was a combination of survey and focus group, and the survey results, only about just a hair under 20%, like 17-18% of the respondents were directly affected by book bans, either in their school district or their county or whatever level of government. But to Elissa's very good point, almost half of the respondents said that the conversation around book banning, the vibration through communities around book bans, meant that they were already, it was influencing what they put on the shelves in their classroom libraries, what they used for materials in their formal parts of their day. And concerningly, I mean, that's all concerning, but nearly 2/3 of the respondents said that book banning has a negative impact on their ability to teach. 72% said that restricting access to diverse books decreases students' engagement in reading. None of those are going to be shocking to this group, but we actually did the the research. I will also tell you that when I focus groups that we did around this issue, more than one time, you'd have 6 teachers on the screen, educators on the screen, and more than one time, someone would start telling a story about being called into the principal's office because they had, chosen a passage. And at the end of both calls, I happened to be observing, they were weeping, and others on the call were weeping because the stress of the thought that they might lose their jobs or end up on the evening news was such a heavy lift.
Mm-hmm.
And these are teachers who already are getting their heads kicked in, in their just daily jobs these days. So that's a huge thing. I'll add too that I bet, Elissa, you and I will have to find something to fight about tonight. I don't think it's going to be this. One is physical barriers. And by that, I mean, a book can be on the shelf in a library, but a lot of libraries in a lot of parts of our country, you have to be able to get to the library,
I think we lost her.
Oh, Kyle,
which means a car or a bus. You have to be
Kyle, if you can hear us, I think we're losing your connection a little bit.
I can jump in. Well, you're back. You froze for a minute.
I don't know what's going on. But libraries, sometimes they require a home address for a library card. And honestly, I've worked with publishers my entire career, and I love them. I love the people I know in publishing, but price is a barrier. And that the economics of publishing undercut access to diversity. Please go ahead, Elissa.
I was just going to chime in and say that we have studies, and these studies like First Book does are so important because we use them for funding. We use them for proof. We use them to fight book bans and legislation. Diverse books, especially newer diverse books, increase literacy rates because the kids want to read a cool book. Like the Walter Award was just given to the new Kareem Abdul-Jabbar graphic novel. And it's such a cool book. Like a kid is more likely to want to pick that up than, but it's not cheap. And some people don't want it in their library.
Yeah. Inflation has definitely played a part. The economics of availability and accessibility certainly affect how many books kids have. My parents didn't buy me any books, not because they didn't want to. We didn't have a lot of money. And so there was this program where every kid got to pick 2 books. I can't remember the second book I picked, but I remember the first one was Charlotte's Web because I liked reading about animals. But these things, yes, they really help.
Yeah, they matter.
Yeah, and here I had 2 books in my home. I mean, back then there weren't as many diverse books. It's what I had, but I got books at home. You were talking before about this chilling effect. And Kyle, you mentioned, these numbers are staggering. So I think you said 18% of areas are affected by book bans, but the how many people they affect is much broader than that. And that's the chilling effect I think you're talking about, Elissa. A couple of years ago, Penn America, maybe it was 3 years ago, one of the biggest things that they hear from teachers is that they want more support around how to address book bans. And back then, when Penn America said that, I don't think anyone really knew how to do that yet. What are some ways we're seeing where educators are being supported and trained on how to talk about book bans and how to react to, getting their heads kicked in, as Kyle phrased it?
I think that's the $1 million question. Book bans are very local. A lot of times it's the school board. And the school board in small towns is made up of like your neighbor down the way. So we, WNDB built a bunch of resources available on our website for if you're a teacher, if you're a publishing professional, if you're an educator, if you're a parent, you're a librarian, you're sensing a book ban coming down the pike, the importance of documentation, the importance of community outreach. There have been times where people fight back, get it in the news, and the bans are overturned. But it's a very tricky issue, and I don't know that anyone has really cracked the code on how to support educators. People are trying, but I did have someone say, and this is something that we've been working on at WNDB, but we're a small org, is that teachers have asked for a book database because some of these censorship happy organizations have a database. I'm sure you've heard of it, Kyle, with all the titles and like the page that this bad word is on for whatever. And teachers have asked for like basically a rebuttal to that. But the problem is when you're rebutting, it's hard to be like, well, that word isn't there. You have to be like, well, this, it's such an in-depth thing for so many different books. But that's one idea that I've heard bandied about. But it's a tough question.
It's very tough. And I think, First Book has done some trainings on it. And also we partner with the American Federation of Teachers, AFT, probably everybody knows, second largest teacher labor union in the country, about 1.8 million members. They have been very clear and very strong, and they have supported members through a range of ways, some trainings on their Share My Lesson platform, as well as legal funds to support teachers who lose their jobs and things like that. Let me say one thing that we did. I guess it's about almost 2 years ago now. We ran a study on the impact of infusing diverse books into classroom libraries. And we did this, and we didn't use the phrase book bans when we issued the study results, because we were trying to, and I'll say this slowly because I know it's going to be shocking to everyone, but infuse, here's the hard part, actual facts. I know. Into the public discourse. I'll give you a minute. And what we found, it was a 6-month study. We identified 435 classrooms around the country. 8 weeks, we jumped in and did a study of the kids. And I'll just give you a couple of headlines. Again, I don't think anyone on this call is going to be shocked by this, but the collective reading in the classrooms that received diverse books jumped by 4 hours per week. That's a lot for a classroom. And reading scores jumped by 3 to 7 points higher than the anticipated increases that happened during the course of an ordinary school year. And so, I think, Elissa, you were making this point earlier. Yes, it's engaging for kids. They want to read more. It's more relevant to their lives. It's also for anyone who's worried about a workforce that is literate, a population that is literate and can therefore engage in our democracy. Those kinds of great big issues. If you're really worried about those issues, this is one of the central keys to fixing that. So we've got more data on those things, and I'm happy to provide the link if anybody wants it.
And I think that data is very is one thing that is very helpful in fighting book bans, because if people are concerned about literacy, you say, well, you know how you fix literacy. And sometimes these numbers do matter. They do make a difference if they reach someone that's willing to digest them.
I mean, yeah, I loved reading about, See Spot Run, but a lot of other nicer, more fun things to read, I'm sure. Can we hear more about the Stories for All project and some newer programs at First Book? What inspired the start of the Stories for All project? And what are some newer programs at First Book?
Sure, I'm happy to. We've always been trying to, of course, it was, 34 years ago when we started. The topic of diversity in children's books was not happening at the volume that it is now. So it's wonderful to see it really come to the forefront. We have worked on it for decades. Stories for All was in 2013. We had again been running studies, and we received feedback from our members. 90% of respondents told us that their children would be more enthusiastic readers if they had access to books with characters and images that reflected their lives, their families. And so we responded to that, and we launched Stories for All. We kicked it off by spending $1 million on inventory to make books available on the First Book Marketplace. That was by a major inventory purchase with HarperCollins and Lee and Low. And that was that we were trying to plant the flag and to say there is a market. We understand that publishing, these are businesses, and that we need to drive it by showing market demand. And so, I wish people did things just because it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Market demand is the leverage point we need to bring to the table. Stories for All is still on our website. It is the moniker we use to elevate visibility on the marketplace for diverse content. But let me say a couple of other things that we've been doing more recently. One is we worked with Dr. Susan Newman. I'd be shocked if not everyone on this call knows who she is. She's a great researcher who has really elevated the issue of access to books and diverse books. And we worked with her a few years ago to design a first of its kind a tool called Literacy Rich Classroom Library Checklist. Because what we realized is that even teachers were not always trained to be able to evaluate what was on their classroom library shelves. And if I'm a parent and I'm going into a school, that the likelihood that I can evaluate that and push at the school level and say, I've got this yardstick and your classroom libraries for my son or daughter, you're not hitting the benchmark, right? So we were trying to create a tool that gave teachers and parents the ability to advocate on their own behalf. So we rolled that out. We also, just recently, we did another study asking our members, what languages do they need, And they came back with an astounding push for greater language diversity. And we added bilingual book bundles in 19 different home languages to the First Book Marketplace and really push those bilingual editions to make them available. Another thing that we're just rolling out right now, we announced it, I think today, it might have been yesterday. We're announcing a partnership with The Moth. And you guys probably know The Moth. They are preeminent in teaching storytelling. And they do story slams all over the world, and they have a podcast that's too much fun. The Moth we're hosting them on our community platform so that they can teach thousands of teachers storytelling and those teachers can then teach their students. And to your earlier point when you opened this evening, Irene, the power of storytelling for kids, for language development, for self-realization, and to also, there's nothing more authentically diverse than kids telling their own personal stories. So stay tuned on that. That is coming later this year.
Very exciting.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah. Are the numbers in on how a more confident teacher affects students? Like, have we seen changes in their students? Are they more confident? Are they more comfortable speaking? Is there more participation in classrooms when teachers become better storytellers?
Well, stay tuned. We only announced it today. So, so give me 24 hours, Irene. Give me 24 hours. Stay tuned. This is a major program for us this year. It's a series, so it's multiple. It'll be out there in multiple series, and I'm happy to share with you the link when we grab it when we start it.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Elissa, can we hear about the Unbanned Book Network at We Need Diverse Books?
Sure. The Unbanned Book Network is a program that I have been dreaming of for several years because one of the programs I run at WNDB is our classroom program where I buy books. I say I get my shopping Jones without having to use my own credit card. It's very good. But I have noticed gifting class sets to teachers doesn't really work because they cannot really change the curriculum. Often it's set at the county or state level, and what they really need is classroom libraries. So the Unbanned Book Network is a network where we're planning on gifting a classroom library to a classroom in each state. We're starting with 20 states. Applications are open now. And each classroom will get 100 diverse titles, a bookshelf, an author ambassador assigned to them for the year. A diverse author will virtually beam in, talk to the kids. The kids will get their books to read. And this program really highlights the three populations that we strive to focus on at WNDB. We're helping the creators, diverse creators whose sales are down because of book bans and their visibility is down. We're helping the kids get books. We're helping the teachers shine up their offerings for drop everything and read time during the day. And the teachers, the authors are getting classroom visits, which is how a big portion of income for a lot of children's authors. So that is launched. Applications are open now. And while I have you all here, I thought I would put a plug in for our internship program, where I mentioned this earlier. WNDB supports interns, diverse interns in publishing. We give them a $3,000 grant for the summer. They attend boot camp, they get marketing and network training and all that kind of stuff. But we are looking for publishing partners. So if you're interested, you hire a diverse intern, we give them a grant so that they can work for you. So it kind of makes everyone happy. And those are two of the many programs that we're working on at WNDB right now.
That's excellent. My first internship, it wasn't in publishing. I came from a different industry, but it was a similar program where a nonprofit had grants where they paid the intern. So they paid me as an intern, and I worked for a financial company. But that's great because unpaid interns, yes.
It's a barrier because if you can't get the internship, it's going to be a lot harder. It's already hard to get a job in publishing. I'm sure all of you on this call know it's going to be a lot harder if you don't have the internship. But how do you get the internship, especially if you have to be in New York? Although we do accept virtual positions as well, because we try to be as flexible as possible and meet people where they are. But, I lived in New York and I worked it's hard to live on a crummy salary with a bunch of roommates. And it's even harder to do when you don't get paid at all. So it's impossible for some.
Hard to live for free.
Yeah, it's hard to live when there's no money coming in. So that's how we try to fix that.
So there's a partnership here between First Book and WNDB. Can you tell us a little about the partnership between your two organizations?
Kyle, you want to talk about it?
Sure, I can talk about part of it. We have been fans of We Need Diverse Books since its earliest days, and most recently, First Book started a coalition called the Diverse Books for All Coalition, and it has grown now with the support of We Need Diverse Books. It's grown now to over 60 organizations who, I guess, remain fearless about using the D word, diversity, even in this current climate. And what it does is we're experimenting with strategies to get the word out. First, about the impact of diverse books for kids. Secondly, we're holding each other up in a climate when these themes are under siege. And that's really important. And We Need Diverse Books is a solid member and a leader in that field. I think that's why you guys do a lot of wonderful work, Elissa. You don't need me to tell you that. But one of the most important things, I think, is you make everybody else brave. And because you're out there in front with it in your name, right in front, leading the field, leading the publishing industry. So bravo on all of that work. And we've also worked together to share data with educators and families on the importance of diverse books, as I discussed before. I've been on interviews with members of your team, Elissa, media interviews where we discuss survey findings from both organizations to really promote that it's of course it's the right thing to do in this beautifully diverse country of ours, but it also is the right thing to do if you're worried about academic performance and literacy rates. So we have we've worked together on a lot of things like that. But please,
I think we both our organizations, I don't want to speak for you, but we really believe in the power of a book. And working with Diverse Books for All from its birth, we worked on some collective purchasing agreements. And like Kyle said, it's just really nice to be with all these other people. It's nice to know you're not alone. And there's so many people all over the country just trying to help get books to kids and get kids reading. And I really do believe that books can change the world.
Absolutely. They definitely can. I hope everyone here believes that as well. Kyle, you had mentioned the marketplace. Can you tell us a little bit more about the marketplace and the partnerships that you guys have with publishers? How does that work? How does that work to shepherd books to communities in need around the country?
Sure. Well, from the day we opened our doors, we have been committed to recognizing that it has to make economic sense for publishers, that they are businesses. And, I'm one of those people, and I suspect I'm not the only one on this call, who has a private sector head and a public sector heart, right? And so we started the First Book Marketplace with some donated inventory, and we still manage a lot of donations from the publishers. Because the publishers were being besieged by requests from, folks all over the country who were trying to reach kids in need, and they would need 8 books about dinosaurs. And then the publishing industry was chasing down, and sending those requests to their warehouses. And First Book really stepped in as a partner in that from our earliest days and said, if we're not trying to, we don't have our own program. We are here to build the infrastructure to support other nonprofits and Title I schools and others who are reaching kids directly. We want to be the infrastructure underneath that. And so we said, we'll aggregate this group of heroes and we will act as your distributor for for contributed inventory because it was enormously expensive for the publishing industry to respond to individual small requests, understandably, right? So we stepped into that space and built sort of the largest scale distribution for contributed inventory. And then we realized that we needed to move up the pipeline, that the issue was not of access was not going to be solved by excess inventory distributions. And so we went to the publishers and said, you are limiting your own access to a consumer market because of the way that books are priced. And, they're priced to accommodate the fact that it's a consignment market, or at least traditionally it was. And so publishers were always having to safeguard themselves on the backflow of inventory when it wouldn't move in bookstores. And so we went in and said, we really looked at every element of book pricing, and we knocked as many of them off the table as we could. For example, we said we will buy on a non-returnable basis, for example. And I will tell you that when you use the word non-returnable in a publishing house, choirs of angels burst into song. And so we realized that if we could help them crack into the market, serving the lowest 30% of the socioeconomic ladder, as opposed to the top, I'm going to say 5% of that ladder that is the traditional book market for children's books, that would be welcome news to the publisher. And if we could do it at sort of a cost plus business model, that they would make a little bit of money, but we'd be able to crack open access by pushing that threshold price for books down. And it also allowed us, see, this is the risk of asking. This is the risk. Cancel your breakfast, guys. I may be talking all night. But just quickly, we began to realize, for example, that books like Very Hungry Caterpillar, which I suspect a few people remember on this call, that instead of them having a Spanish version and an English version, that we went to them and said, if you create a bilingual edition, we'll buy the first 30,000 copies. And what do you know? They produced a bilingual edition, right? And when we hit 100,000 copies of that book, they released it at retail. We did that with Goodnight Moon. We've done that with a lot of classic books. And it taught us that if we act collectively, and this is Elissa and I holding hands on this, if we act collectively, purchase collectively, that we actually can have an impact on product design, on the authors that get accepted into major public publishing houses. That's where the strength is, right there.
Strength in numbers.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, you basically created a market for a book that might not have existed, or you certainly, lit that fire. That's amazing. I know we're running down on the clock here. I like to ask this question. I like to think about this question myself, and I like to ask this question too. What do you feel is the path from diversity in books to diversity in mainstream media? And I know we've talked a lot about the different things that contribute to this. And I know we're talking about books today, but we're also talking about stories. How do we get books, diverse stories that are in books, into mainstream media?
Please.
Well, I think it's all the same ecosystem, right? That it's stories. So you go to stories in books, translates to stories in movies, in television, in stories into the mainstream media. I think, the more popularity, the more audience, like you accessed an audience with first book, the more you provide, and we believe the audience is there for diverse titles, the more you amplify and support the diverse titles, the more they get out into the world, into circulation. The movie studios notice. I mean, so many books get optioned. That's a whole other panel.
Yeah.
But that's how they come into the world, by paying attention to them, by buying diverse books.
Yeah, I like the support. I think one thing that's disappointing to hear is, there's not a market for that. So hearing about this collaboration, Kyle, you're talking about this, the collaborations that First Book does, but also these programs to support teachers and educators and being comfortable about talking, addressing diverse stories. I think it creates an environment where other people, their students, now also feel comfortable sharing these stories. And what I would like to see one day is to see more of these stories in mainstream media. And I don't think it gets there unless people feel comfortable. And programs like that, I think, help people feel comfortable. We have 5 minutes, which is usually a little bit less than I leave for Q&A, but I do want to open it up for Q&A. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat or raise your hand and you can speak your question here.
No math questions, Jane Fleming.
Mm-mm. Kyle said she was going to handle all of them. Before you guys got on, that's what she said.
I mean, you did give us a lot of data today. So even though you say you're not good at math.
I did. I'm kind of proud of myself. Yeah.
The question, if there are no Q&A questions in the chat, can you tell us what would you like to see more in the publishing? What are some things that you would like to see more of in the publishing or literacy industry to support more diversity in books and stories? We talked about collaboration. What are some things that you want to see from this industry here?
I have an answer.
Okay.
I talked about our internship grant program, and by having diverse people work in publishing, they can recognize and shepherd diverse titles through the publishing pipeline, and they can advocate for these titles. They can get the marketing dollars, because who knows the magic sauce that creates a bestseller? It's the age-old question, but I do know it has a lot to do with money that comes from the publisher behind the title. And if you get the right people into publishing, you get those books out on the end caps, at the bookstores, and the more you prove the market for the books, the more I think that, in my opinion, it also combats book bans. Because if there's a blammo blockbuster book, the kids are going to want to read it, and maybe that comes around again. But I do think that it comes with just buying diverse books and championing them inside and outside the industry.
I'll jump on to the end of that and say, I also think that I love publishers. Again, they've been the backbone of everything we've built. And there are things that they can do better, full stop, right? And one thing I would love to see them do is to experiment with more formats. I think that there are lower cost. I think price is a huge barrier, and that's not new. When you're looking at premium picture books for kids, little kids, you're talking about an average price point of about $20. Well, there's a smaller and smaller group of families that can possibly afford that on any kind of a regular basis. And I think looking at, specs to try to decrease price, coming up with special formats to make those stories that no kid should grow up without available. I think that's incredibly important. And because there's a whole, like First Book focuses on the folks who are really struggling, but there's a whole lot of families who are right there in the middle who need our help and who need great stories to be accessible. And I will say, I know we're up against the clock, but the thing that keeps me going after all these years is to say that we have been communicating mankind, womankind, we have been communicating using stories since we could paint on our cave walls. And it has motivated major religions. You know, if you're looking at the Quran, the Bible, it has motivated humanity since the dawn of humanity. And I'll tell you quickly, I'll say, I saw an older guy out in Iowa, a white man standing up furious and giving Senator Grassley an earful about a young man in Maryland, here where I live in Maryland, who had been picked up by ICE. And it doesn't matter which side of the political debate you're on. It matters, but it does matter for this point. And that is the story of one young Latino man in the state of Maryland transcended the country geography.
We've lost Kyle for a second, but of the message.
He was leaving us on such a good note.
It really was. Yes, that story was felt across.
Story. But he was so fired up by that he stood on his feet and he yelled at a senior member of our Senate. And I'm just saying, let's never forget how powerful what we are doing is in the world, because sharing those stories is what's going to get us from the divided place we are to where we want to be, you know, a more perfect union. So I'll put my podium down now, but that's why this conversation makes me so happy. So thanks so much for tonight.
It's such a good point to leave us on, Kyle. Stories matter.
Stories matter.
Thank you both for being here and talking to all of us here today. I really loved hearing about how you collaborate with each other, with other publishers, with our whole industry. I'm always talking about how we're here to build a community. And this conversation has been wonderful. I really appreciate both of you here building our community, helping to build our community. I hope everyone in the audience has also enjoyed this. This has been recorded, so it will be available later. Elissa and Kyle, thank you both so much for being here. Everyone, please.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, you guys. Elissa's a rock star, so it's great to be here with you, Elissa.
I'll share any stage with you, Kyle. Don't worry about it.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone.
All right, you too. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thanks. Take care.